Namaste everyone.
Namaste everyone.
Namaste.
Namaste.
My name is
My name is
Tantri,
Vallabha Tantri, and I extend a cordial welcome to all the panelists and the attendees of this webinar. As part of the Hindu Heritage Month,
as part of the Hindu Heritage Month, we have this beautiful seminar or webinar discussing
how to incorporate Hindu history and legacy into temple schools and Bal Vihars.
Ajayji,
I think we can start the webinar and
fade out
the music.
Yeah, the music is stopped. And you're ready to go.
Okay.
Sanatano Nitya Nutanaha.
Meaning
The philosophy of Hindu Dharma is timeless and universal.
And also
for the followers of Hindu Dharma,
every day
there is a novel thing
that
one finds about the Dharma.
We as
Hindu parents
try our best to impart
Hindu values
to our kids. However, I do know that
while we ourselves try to follow the Hindu traditions
that our
parents have tried to hand over to us,
I can say
for myself that
I am 25%
of what my parents did, and I have a long way to go.
We
also wonder
whether our next generation will be able to carry
the torch forward
and preserve the Hindu values
and traditions.
Mind you, with every passing generation,
there is an evident risk of getting these values diluted and further down the line.
While we
are pondering over these important issues,
there comes a challenge
of
the skewed and incorrect narrative
that is rampant
in current times
about what Hindu Dharma means.
And
this is having an impact in multitude
of Hindu homes,
causing a disconnect between parents and their children.
On a frequent basis,
our kids
get to hear
several things about Hindu Dharma in school, in
college campuses,
or worse still in social media.
So we as
Hindu parents,
as proud
Hindu parents, need to show our children the values of Hindu Dharma and Hindu philosophy. So again, this is Vallabha Tantri, and cordially extending a welcome as Director of Mandir Relations for Hindu Pact. Thank you all the panelists. I'll give a brief introduction of all the panel members that we have, because this webinar is a start of a Vichar Manthan, if you will, a start of multi-pronged strategy to preserve and impart and inculcate the Hindu values, Hindu traditions to our next generation and the subsequent generation. And we will be discussing variety of topics here, as how the next generation will be celebrating festivals, or how do we teach our kids the immediate Hindu history, not the itihasas like Ramayana and Mahabharata, including those, and there are some immediate Hindu history that we will have to teach our kids, and how to represent Hindu Dharma in outreach and multi-faith forums. So that's all we are going to cover in this webinar. It's going to be a fantastic webinar. We have leaders from all across the country here, leaders in Bal Vihars, leaders in education programs for kids, and doing phenomenal work locally and nationally. So just a brief introduction, and I'll go in-depth introduction of each one of them, each of the panelists. We have Srimati Bhakti Modi from Minnesota. We also have Dr. Anita Joshi from Indianapolis. We have Yagnesh Patel from New Jersey, and we have Jayant Daftardar from Atlanta. So welcome to everyone. Moving on, we will be going to our first panelist, that is Bhakti Modi. In-depth introduction of Bhakti now. The format of this webinar will be such that we'll go to each panelist and we will be asking them pertinent questions. And then, at the end of the webinar, we will go back to them and ask them the next steps and what do they think would be important, steps for the community forward. So introducing Bhakti Modi. Bhakti currently works in healthcare analytics, in senior healthcare in technology, and has a master's in health informatics and analytics. She has worked extensively in Hindu Mandir Executives Conference, World Hindu Council, and various national and regional level Hindu youth and education based programs and initiatives for the past 20 years. She currently serves as a school administrator for Hindu American Temple School at Hindu Society of Minnesota, and is on the senior commission under Chanhassen City Council. She lives in Carver County, Minnesota, with her husband and a puppy. Welcome, Bhakti. Thank you for joining us today.
Namaste, Varmaji.
So Bhakti, to start off this webinar, you are the first panelist, and we would like to know, a brief personal story of what led you to, get involved so extensively in working for Hindu Dharma.
Absolutely. So namaste, everyone. Many of you do know me, but for those who you do not, I've had the great opportunity to be involved with VHPA, different mandirs and different organizations for 25 years now. I first started as a member of the VHPA family, Hindu Heritage Family Camp in Northeast, or in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, in that area when I was 8 years old. So my first introduction to pretty much anything in terms of community, our heritage, what happens in society, the work that people are doing, was as an 8-year-old child looking and seeing all these people around me who are collectively putting the effort to providing all these opportunities and resources for kids just like me. Throughout all these events, I had the chance to meet a lot of wonderful people and learn from a lot of them. As most kids' trajectory goes in this country growing up here, every Sunday I was forced by my parents to go to mandir. Whether I had an option or not, there was none. I was insistent on volunteering during festivals. I had to go here, I had to go there. And it was an unrelenting part of my life that I could not get rid of. When I finally got a chance to leave my little bubble and go off to college and out of my city, my comfort, my home, I thought, oh my goodness, I have Sundays back again. This is wonderful. I'm going to sleep in on Sundays. And I did. I slept in on Sundays for a few years. But about year 2 or 3, I started thinking, oh, this is not as much fun as I thought. Like, it's fine to sleep in, but something is missing. There's something I'm not looking forward to. And it took me a while to understand what was missing is something during the week that reset my mind, that reset my soul. So for me, it wasn't just that coming to mandir was an opportunity to learn. For me, coming to mandir was a way for me to re-energize after a really difficult hamster wheel that we all live on Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Whether you're working or in school or activities, none of us live a very lazy or comfortable life. Even if we're not involved, we're constantly surrounded by the stress of a capitalistic world and a materialistic world at that. So coming to the mandir on Sundays was a chance for me to disconnect from the harshness of the day-to-day life and understand that there's more to it than just that. There's more to life than just waking up, going to school, going to work, doing what's required, doing the dishes, going back to sleep. So after I finished college, I had the opportunity to come back into a working life. I got the chance to go back to Pittsburgh, where I grew up significantly, and I started volunteering and helping out at the mandir. But even still, throughout college, I had a chance to work with many national organizations, and I connected with many youth, many people of my age and my background from around the country. And that's what made me realize that I'm not alone in feeling the way that I feel. I'm not alone in thinking and struggling with the things that I face with my identity. I had a chance to meet other Hindu students and youth, really, who have different levels of comfort with their identity. It made me understand the challenges other people face. It also made me understand how privileged I am to have the resources that I have, because there are so many out there that do not. at no fault of their own or at no fault of anyone's. There are just limitations in the world that we all face, and we just don't know it until it's in front of us. So throughout college, I spent a lot of time connecting with people in that way. And then when I had the opportunity to come back as a working professional, I used that experience and background to start helping out in different educational and youth-related programs locally or regionally or wherever I could, whether it was the Hindu Monday Executive Conference, whether it was a temple, whether it was a virtual conference, however it may be. Then 6 years ago, I got married and moved to Minnesota. And one of the first things I did before I even got married, whenever it was decided that I was moving to Minnesota, the first thing I did was I emailed a few people I knew in Minnesota, Vallabaji being one of them, Vishal Agarwal being another, and I said, I'm coming, I'm ready to start working, I want to do something and make a difference in the life of other students who I know are going through the same thing that I went through no longer than 15 years ago. So for the past few years, I've really had the chance to bring all that together and collaborate with many other great and experienced people and provide some new challenges and new solutions to the kids of today through our Mandir education program. So Balaji, I hope that answers that question.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. And my next question to you would be, you are our next generation of Hindu, and you are a role model, not just in Minnesota Hindu community, but nationwide as well, where we see and where we tell our kids to say, hey, you can also get involved in temple activities, Bal Vihar activities. But I do want to know from you, or the community wants to know, how do you think the festivals would be celebrated after 15, 20 years in this country? And, as you know, right now, the festivals are celebrated with the standards set by our first generation immigrants. So what are your ideas to retain the core values of the festivals that our, forefathers brought from India?
So festivals for me is a topic very close to my heart, because there's a couple things I hope people understand is that, so when we talk about the word legacy, we often just immediately think of what's happened behind us. We forget to think about the fact that everything we're doing every day is actually going to be the legacy 30 years from now. So while it's important for us to focus and learn on the history and legacy of the past, we have to really structure our thought process on creating a legacy for the future. Because otherwise it doesn't matter, everything will just remain historical. We have to learn to move the wheels forward. So when I think of legacy in two ways. One is, how do we see ourselves and present ourselves? And second is, how does the world around us see us and experience us? And when we are combining different cultures, the first thing that we want to know about other cultures and other cultures want to know about us is festivals. Festivals are the way the community connects with each other. It doesn't matter what part of the world you're from. The funnest time of the year is festivals. Whether you're in America and it's Christmas time, everything is shut down, lights are on. Whether you're in India, it's Diwali, everything's shut down, the lights are on. Where it doesn't matter where you are in the world, festivals are celebrated with the same grandeur. They're celebrated with the same thoughts in mind, with community, with collectiveness, with positivity, and with fun. The challenge we face here is that as minorities, we are not able to have that same experience we would if we were in a culture or area where we're not the minorities. I've only celebrated Diwali in India once in my whole life, and it was the most mind-blowing experience. I'm never going to be able to replicate that in the US, and I know that. Because when I step outside my house, every house is not celebrating Diwali. Every family is not celebrating Diwali. So for me to connect to Diwali, I have to make 3 times the effort here than I would anywhere else. The thing about generations is, I also look at generations or people, Hindu people, in 3 different categories. The first category being families who have spent significant amount of time in India or wherever outside of US that they're from, and have come to the US at a later age in life and have an active memory of how certain things work or how certain things are done. Second group of people are the kids of those people who have some firsthand knowledge based on hearing what's happening in their homes, but have grown up here. And the third group of people are second or third generations who don't have immediate experiences, or Hindu people who are not from India. so don't have the same Indian background that many other families do. So when we think of legacy, we often get stuck in that first group, just continuing what we know, what we've immediately seen in the last 20 years. What we need to focus on is the other two groups, because that's where we're heading as a community. So when we think about celebrating festivals, the biggest thing is it's important to keep up with our rituals, but it's just as important to adjust our rituals. We cannot do the same thing that was done 30 years ago. We cannot do it now. We have to learn. We have to be able to question every single ritual. And that's a very uncomfortable thing for a lot of people, for parents, for teachers. It's really uncomfortable when kids ask us, well, why do we do that? I don't want to do it that way. Because in that moment, we have to understand it ourselves, which we often do not. The whole reason of, because it was done for 5,000 years like this, no longer exists. That cannot continue. So when we go forward, we have to be able to be comfortable questioning the difficult things, whether it's social difficulty, whether gender equality, whether it's understanding, connection, no matter what it is. I will give a small example. So Karwa Chauth just passed. So for the past 6 years, I do Karwa Chauth every year. My husband has been fasting with me. I didn't ask him. I didn't bring it up. That was just expected, and that was his choice. It's great. We do it every year together. A few years ago, Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America put out a Hindu Vrat book that explains our rituals, why each Vrat was celebrated, how it was created, what was the purpose behind it. Until that book came out, the only thing I knew about Karwa Chauth was that women fasted for husbands, because that's what I saw in the movies. That's what I saw people doing around me. They wore red saris, they fasted all day, they saw the moon, and that's Karwa Chauth. Then a few years ago, when I read the Hindu Vrat book, I read that Karwa Chauth was created back in the day when men left their homes to go work in physically dangerous situations, and women were together, so they prayed for the safety of their husbands as a community, as sisters coming together to pray for their family. And I thought, that is beautiful. Why did nobody ever tell me that? All of a sudden, I was like, that's a wonderful reason to fast. But guess what? That reason doesn't exist anymore. My husband and I both work at home sitting in our desk. The only danger we have is carpal tunnel, right? We're both sitting at home working the same amount of hours in the same location. So when we're celebrating Karwa Chauth, we've adjusted. We don't read the katha the same way that our previous generations did. We read the story and we understand this is a way for us to celebrate our bond together. Now, I brought this conversation back to my father, Sanjay Mehta, who most of you know. And I said, Papa, Mama fasts for you every year for the last 20 plus years that I've seen. How many times have you fasted for her? And he goes, nahi, but aisa to nahi, par kar sakte hai, aisi baat nahi. And he faltered a little bit. And I said to him last year, I don't agree with that. She works just as hard as you. You're not going anywhere. This is an equal thing. If anything, you know what? In Mama's sake, you're the one who's not getting good food. So if anything, you should be fasting for her double, right? So this year, for the first time ever, he decided to also fast on Karwa Chauth. And all of a sudden, immediately, I am more connected to this Vrat and this festival than I ever would have been otherwise. The reason I bring this example up is if we don't understand the logic, if we don't adjust the logic, if we don't re-collaborate and talk about these things, these rituals and festivals will die out within a generation. There is no reason for them to continue the same way that they were developed 4,000 years ago, because that society doesn't exist anymore.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Bhakti. We now, we will come back to you once we go around the entire panel. And thank you so much for that insightful answer. I next move on to Dr. Anita Joshi. Anita Joshi, MD, was born and raised in New Jersey. Dr. Joshi is a practicing pediatrician and continues to serve on many boards. She's currently the community relations liaison for the Hindu Temple of Central Indiana. Dr. Joshi has given many presentations on Hinduism and conducts temple tours and has helped to develop an iPad audio guided tour for the temple. She has 2 children, both are Bal Gokulam, meaning temple school graduates. Welcome, Anita ji, to this webinar. Anita ji, you are on mute.
Sorry, everyone. Namaste.
Namaste, namaste. Anita ji, we will start, with your personal story. and how you are involved, and what inspires you to be involved in this Hindu work. And there will be a following up question as well. So
Thank you so much, Vallavi. So I'm just going to say that I was born and raised in New Jersey, as you heard, in a time just after the 1965 Immigration Act was passed. And that was the first time that Indians were really allowed to immigrate to the United States. And so my parents came in that first wave of Indian immigrants. I therefore grew up in a very small, predominantly Italian Catholic town, where I was the one of only 2 Indians in my school. And my parents taught me in this environment Hindu values and culture. And my mother and father, but especially my mother, was really able to instill in us a sense of the value of the universal principles of Hinduism, which she always emphasized to us were very similar to the values that we heard around us growing up in that predominantly Christian society. And that they were the values that all religions speak of, and that Hinduism has a deep and rich and very ancient tradition that in fact preceded many of these other faiths. And so she signed us up for Hindu camps, and my dad took us to both Hare Krishna mandirs and other mandirs, because those were the ones that were really burgeoning at the time. And we could see our importance as Hindus, but both of my parents felt that it was very important for us to see ourselves as more similar to our neighbors than different. And in creating that feeling of community and not of separation, they actually promoted in us a desire to feel good about our Indian culture and made us very excited about sharing that culture with our friends and not being embarrassed by it, not being something that we said, well, we have to do this at home, but we don't have to do this outside. And so both of my parents came to this country and actually volunteered quite actively in local American organizations as well as in Hindu organizations. And so the importance of giving back was very important. It was taught. It was very important to me, I'll just say. So I grew up in that kind of environment, and I graduated medical school. I met my husband, Arun, at medical school. We got married, and then we left our families on the East Coast and moved to the Midwest. And we have been involved at the Hindu Temple of Central Indiana since our children were 3 and 5 years of age, because much like Bhakti, in the middle of those periods of time, we were busy studying, doing residency, establishing our careers, and we pulled back not only from Hinduism, but from all of our community involvements because we had to focus on other things. So I think sometimes when Hindu parents become nervous about children pulling back and they see it as a pulling back, it's just a natural evolution of the process of what we have all gone through, right? So we became very involved with the temple. We were very involved with the construction, the Kumbha Abhishekam, the document, and even documenting the process in a film with our local PBS station. And our children who started at 3 and 5 are now 19 and 22, and they continue to be very much rooted in their Hindu identity and their cultural roots. And yet they are both very involved in their lives as full-blooded Americans who are interested in the local issues that affect their local community. And I think that is where they pull from our Hindu tradition to work on issues that they find compelling to them. And I think that is something that I felt like my parents gave me a really good understanding of in a generation, frankly, where there wasn't always an understanding of that. So I had a very unique perspective, probably because I wasn't surrounded by lots of temples and lots of Balagokulams and lots of opportunities to sort of insulate myself within the Hindu community. And, I remember, I'll just share a very small story, but I remember my parents getting together with some friends, and I'm sure you've heard in social groups amongst your own Indian friends, some parents saying, अरे वो अमेरिकन्स ऐसे करते हैं, इस कल्चर में ऐसे होता है, इस कल्चर में वैसे ही होता है. And the truth is, I looked at them as a teenager and I said, मैं ऐसी हूँ, ये मेरा कल्चर है, मैं अमेरिकन हूँ, मैं इंडियन नहीं हूँ. And they got upset and they said, nahi, tum Indian ho. And I said, haan, main Indian hu, but I am Indian by cultural roots. I am Indian by heritage. I am not Indian by birth. And that changes my perspective because that is the culture in which I live and the way in which I find myself. And so I think those things are very delicate balances to have. And it's important for us as we move forward and as I have raised my children to understand that those balances are critical to maintain. Simply criticizing the other and shutting the door will create different conversations, I think, that may be counterproductive to what we are trying to do.
Point well taken, Anita ji. I completely understand. And by the way, your Hindi pronunciation was spot on. The next question that I have is, because I know that you have been involved in the temple multi-faith, outreach efforts as well. So the next question coming your way is, how do you want the temple management to represent Hindu traditions in schools and in any other kind of outside setting or forum? And what do we need to do for that?
It's a great question. I mean, I think we really need to represent our history and our culture from a sense of deep pride and a feeling of positivity. I would say that as a base. I really would. As we see school boards wrestle with the idea of teaching a more full and honest version of American history, as we see communities struggle with political divisiveness and questions of science and faith and conspiracy theories, and as we, I think, as a country struggle with the power of social media and how small pockets of misinformation can spread very quickly, this question of representing Hinduism in a full and complete way becomes critically important. Hinduism is one of the only faiths, for example, where science and religion peacefully coexist. And the pandemic showed us how important it is for human survival that faith and science can coexist. And so we need to, I think, speak as a Hindu community from those feelings of pride and personal understanding, and consistency with our language about our own story in a way that is so positive that it allows us to really hold that in our hearts. And I want to assure you that positive and proud does not mean that we simply sugarcoat or whitewash our story. That is not what I am suggesting. I think my parents answered questions very honestly. They acknowledged that there were times where there seemed to be, as Bhakti pointed out in this tradition of what we were taught and yet what the roots were, they acknowledged the inconsistencies in the theory and the practice. And they pointed out also, on the other hand, that that exists in all cultures and all religions. And so they shared many aspects of Hindu and Indian history that were not always taught in schools. And those are the things that I think temple management must become well-versed in. I think it helps when we're confronted with these controversial actions in our own history to not immediately become defensive, but to point out the background of how that history came to be, and to share, other sides of popular stories, to make sure that we share from our story a desire to give that background, to not defend, but to provoke a feeling of empathy and compassion within those that are listening to our history. And that is really in line and consistent with our dharma. So I think it's important to be able to point out connections and difficulties in the majority culture and the history that are similar to the difficulties that we have encountered in our own history. And that means, yes, that we must know both histories. And it unfairly puts a burden of work, I understand, on us as a minority culture to understand not only our own minority culture, but to understand the majority culture in which we live, so that we can present things without falling into certain, I think, negative stereotypes or traps of not doing it correctly. So we have to work on knowing the similarities and help others to, see us sympathetically. I think we need to be prepared to engage in social media in a positive way. I think the most important thing we can do is remain true to the root of dharmic principles, seeing the divinity within each and every other human being, always trying to see that shared humanity, the beautiful background of Vasudeva Kutumbakam that we are sharing here today is critically important when we present in the outside world. When the majority culture points out an action or a moment where it seems that our principles have not necessarily been followed, we say, yes, perhaps they were not. But you can also empathetically show where there have been difficulties in following traditions in those American cultures or other religious traditions, and that we as humans may falter from our ideals. But Hindu faith does remain rooted in these fundamental ideals, and they are critical to present, I think, in that way. And I think, that's really probably the best perspective I can offer. So I hope that helps.
Thank you so much for re-emphasizing how important it is to point out how our histories came to be, and the empathy and the compassion aspect of our Hindu dharma, and so many beautiful points that you have covered. Thank you so much, Anita ji. Will come again with the next question once we go around the panel. So thank you. Next in our panel is Yagnesh Patel. Yagnesh Patel is IT consultant by profession. He has keen interest in current affairs, education reforms, and how they affect. He has keen interest in education, current affairs, education reforms, and how they affect Hindu parents and kids. He is also the lead coordinator at Hindu Parents Network. Hindu Parents Network is an initiative of KOHNA, Coalitions of Hindus in North America. It was started with an aim of bringing Hindu parents on a common platform. It has wide-ranging projects from textbook advocacy to creating awareness about conscious Hindu parenting. Welcome, Yagnesh Patel ji. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. And Yagnesh ji, just like the other panelists, we would like to hear your personal story of what motivates you to do this, be this dharmic yodha that you are.
Sure. I am not sure if it is I am yodha, but at least what little we can do for the community as well as the larger good of the world, right?
Yeah.
So I think I have a different background than Bhakti ji and Anita ji. And to start with, my formative years were spent in back home in Bharat. And in fact, I now, when I see the situation, I consider myself lucky, where I spent a Diwali celebrating with a huge amount of crackers, and also Holi in a big way. So they are part of my memory, big memory, and that's I still recall. And whenever I get chance, I hope I can create the same environment for my own kids. But as there are challenges as we are raising our kids in Western world, so there are challenges, but whatever little we can do. And that's how it goes for festival. I realized when Bhakti ji was passionately referring the festival celebration, and that's where the memory of my own festival celebration really come up. So fast forward, I migrated US in my early 20s, and I was living with my joint family, with my cousins who were born and brought up here in US. So we have very huge extended family, and it was really fun. And that's where the two approaches, where someone who have grown up in India, Bharat, and someone who has grown up here in West, right? So it was interesting things to learn from each other, and how things goes. So besides that, I am a practitioner of yogasana and meditation, and I really felt that this is our Hindu heritage, which is we are not valuing enough. In fact, if you see it from the bigger perspective, there's something much needed to establish world peace where there is an inner harmony in you, then there is a world peace which is achieved very easily, right? So with that, I also volunteer for teaching yogasana, and that is another small way I try to make uh, approach for approaching Hindu heritage knowledge, making it, enhancing for the community and greater good of the world, right? So now coming back to describing what motivated me to take a volunteering role at Hindu Parents Network. So as I said, in my joint family, we have a dual experience where I had experience from Bharat, and kids or my cousin, we were who were born and brought up here. So they have a different experience, and we attended Bal Vihar classes or some of the adult or you can say youth classes together. And after now I look back, and after now 17 years, fast forward 17 years, when I see that where my cousins are, I really see that they have lost their touch with Hindu or Indian heritage completely. So neither they have much activity going on at the celebrating festival, nor they are able to take help from the uh, great heritage tools like yoga and meditation. Even if I approach them when they are going through the stressful life condition and stuff, when I approach them with this tools which they are somewhat familiar, but still they have seen many other things and grown to be seeing this all of this as a side aspect, not something they are actively living in day-to-day life. So they are not able to even pick up this heritage tools even for their own betterment. So that was really kind of shock up call for me, because I see that happening at the wide scale, not only with my cousin, but many of the next generation, they are moving away from this beautiful heritage. And in fact, this is not something they are seeing the value as a self-help perspective as well, right? So something that concerned me, and those concern was also shared by Hindu Parents Network, because I realized that there is something we could do at the parenting level to change some of this outcome in later age. And those concerns, as I mentioned, are also shared by Hindu Parents Network, and that's where I joined Hindu Parents Network volunteer team. And uh, that's the journey started for me.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing the personal story, and how critical it is when we see our own family members not being as steeped or in depth with the dharma work that we are. It's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing, Yagnishi. So my questions to you are, you have mentioned Hindu Parents Network and your contribution or your role in that. So what are the models that Hindu Parents Network are working on, and how do you want to represent Hindu history and legacy in Hindu Parents Network? And what kind of organizational support you are seeking from other Hindu organizations?
Absolutely. Yeah. So first of all, as I mentioned, we have Hindu Parents Network, which is a stage for Hindu parents to come together. And as part of our effort, we have identified the gap in kids' education, as well as some of the parenting approach our community has taken. So what we have done is, let me go through a few of the stories, and then I connect back to the larger picture. So we've been approached by many Hindu parents regarding their concern. So this one story is from Hindu parents whose daughter was attending the university, and there was some event regarding some Hindu human rights issue. So they come across this event from outside, and they thought this might be good for their daughter to join this event, attend this event, and be in support with this event. So they asked their daughter to join this session, and this is the response they receive, and this something completely unexpected, where she first of all she inquired what kind of human right issue is, and when she come to know that it is Hindu human rights related event, her answer was that, I will stand up for human rights for anyone except Hindus. So this is from coming from Hindu parents themselves. Now we are not going into the detail how it happens and things. That is a complete separate discussion altogether. But this has been happening outside world, right? Where our own kids won't stand up for something like this human rights issue. Now, second story we have is that one parents approach us and say that my kids, my daughters, they've been part of Bal Vihar. We had really good they had really good childhood, and we make sure that all of the uh, Hindu heritage, and they are aware of, they are deep rooted in it. So they have all the right things check marked from our end. However, now they are in university, and fast forward a couple of years or 3 years in university, now they come back at home, and when we ask them to participate in some kind of puja or festivals, they refuse to do so. When we ask them to come with us in a temple, they refuse to do so. So again, we don't want to go into detail why this is happening, but know that there are good underlying reason, and they are connecting back to our parenting approach as well as the gap in education. Now, to just connect this to example with one of the other community approach, where we have this Bal Vihar classes come Sunday satsang for one of our sampradaya, Hindu sampradaya, being hosted in Jewish temple, and this is one of the best example you can say as interfaith harmony, where they are giving Hindu sampradaya to host their sessions in Jewish temple. Now, this temple has also their own Sunday school, and it is happening at a different time. And I happen to see that setup of that Sunday school. So surprisingly, this is just a primary, you can say primary class, where children also learning the alphabets in Hebrews and stuff, and possibly some also the later grade primary school level kids as well. So here they have a big poster regarding their struggle, Jewish community struggle regarding Holocaust, right? They have documented clearly there in a big poster, and they are very much teaching that to their kids. So now coming back to all connecting these stories together, and the major part where we are saying that there are gaps in our education programs, in Hindu kids education program, as well as our parenting approach. So what we've been doing is that at Hindu Parents Network, we research this issue at very deep level, and to inform about our research and our solution, we have developed this Hindu Parents workshop, which is going over all this aspect of the parenting, as well as what are the gaps, and how we can address those using the solution available to parents, right? So we've been hosting since last many months, and we have received very positive response from parents so far. And in fact, they come back and say that we know that there are the things are bad, but we were not able to connect the dots and make a good picture out of it, so that we can move forward with some kind of solutions. So now, with help of this workshop, they've been really getting good information as well as solution what they can do about those education gaps in Hindu kids and regarding Hindu kids education as well as the parenting approaches. And I think last part of the question, Vallabhaji, you had is that how we can
what can the organizations do to support what the HPN work in the Parents Network work?
I think here where awareness level we need help from temple groups. For example, we have one workshop, Hindu parenting workshop, which is being hosted in temple next month. This is one of the big temple in California, and this is what other temples can do as well. We are open to tie-up with temples and deliver parenting workshop, which is good for both parents as well as some of the temple management team as well, where they can focus their resources on. So this is one of the big area we need help, where we have limited resources to reach out the parents through social media, and now the expansion of awareness can really take place in temple premises, right? So that's the big help we need.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Yagnishi, for your insightful answer, and making us all aware of the gaps that is there in kids' education and sometimes in the parenting style as well, and all the issues that is going on in the college campuses. So thank you so much. We'll come back with the next question, but we'll move on to the next panelist right now. That is Jayan Daftarji. Jayan ji is the president of VHPA Atlanta chapter, director of Support a Child USA, a Seva initiative of VHPA. He's also the coordinator of the local VHPA Bal Vihar Hindi school. He has been involved in Bal Vihar both as a parent and as a volunteer. He's an avid student of history and strongly believes in explaining and teaching history as an impartial narrator so that people can know the facts and can form their own informed opinions. Welcome, Jayanji.
Namaste.
Jayanji, we'll start off with your 2-3 minutes of personal story of how your biodata itself was speaking for itself.
Sure.
But we would like to know what inspires you.
Yeah. So I myself and my wife, we came to USA at the turn of the century with our 2.5-year-old son. And we were very happy here to be in this land of opportunity. But at the same time, we were very concerned how we are going to raise our son with the same set of values that we were raised with. Like many other Hindu immigrants from India in a similar situation, our initial reaction to the cultural surrounding was, make money and go back after a few years. Well, after a few years in USA, we came across this fantastic institution called Bal Vihar, run by Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America. And we were very impressed with the format and the content of the program. And after 2 years, my wife started teaching in Bal Vihar. 2 years later, my daughter joined Bal Vihar, and then I was drafted as a coordinator of Bal Vihar. So today, both my children, they have graduated from Bal Vihar. Both have completed their 8 years of schooling and 1 year of volunteering in Bal Vihar. And I can say with confidence that we were able to raise both our children in the USA with proper dharmic upbringing. And this upbringing was possible mainly because of the help that we got from Vishwa Hindu Parishad's Bal Vihar. So that's my personal story.
Thank you, Jayanji. My next question from the community to you is, after 20 years, 20 years from now, our second generations will be running the Bal Vihar. That's the dream that each and every Hindu parent is saying. What should we do now so that the next generation is equipped to continue this tradition?
So, I mean, since we run Bal Vihar, and we run Bal Vihar, which is kind of, we teach languages. So at least my perspective is going to be slightly different than, let's say, people who run Bal Vihar, which are purely teaching religion or purely teaching recital of slokas. So generally what happens is, if you want to teach about religion or history of religion, then it has to be taught by means of teaching language and teaching culture. That's easy. So you can, other aspects of religion or historical aspects of religion, such as economic history or socio-economic history, cultural history, that can be taught very easily. Political history of religion is very difficult to introduce to Bal Vihar students. We run 2 schools in Metro Atlanta area, and our Bal Vihar is curriculum based. So we teach Hindi and Gujarati as 2 languages, but culture and religion is embedded in them. So since the language learning is, or rather it should be, contextual in nature. So what happens is, you can give a very good, holistic view of your religion or your culture by means of language. We use 3-pronged strategy. So after every Bal Vihar session, we have time devoted for cultural activity. So during this time, we celebrate all the Hindu festivals. As part of that celebration, few students from different grades, they make brief presentation, or they do skits to explain significance of the festival. That is, if you are, let's say, if there is a Holi festival, then we have students who can narrate the story of Holika Dahan, and which will also in turn talk about Dashavatars. So that is to a point of Bhaktiji that she mentioned, that they celebrate Karwa Chauth, but they don't know the context of that. But in our case, what we do is we make sure that every festival, when we celebrate, there is, at a different grade levels, students will do some kind of presentation, so that the significance of that particular festival or religion is conveyed to the students. Then we have an annual program where we ask all students to participate on stage on a theme-based cultural activity. So in the past, we have covered themes such as Ramayanas, Mahabharatas, but we have also covered freedom fighters and architects of modern India, Navarasa in a Sahitya, which will cover sons and daughters of India. So that kind of gives, that kind of connects them to the modern Indian leaders. And then we also have a project. So graduating students are supposed, they do a project on special topics, which kind of focuses on iconic landmarks like rivers, mountains, as well as personalities of Bharat. And then there, covers that their role and contribution in upholding Hindu Dharma. So all these activities and the projects, they cover various aspects of religion. And so it's not the linear narration of a religion, but the side aspects of the religion, I would say. And that also provides them, opens up a window with a view of Indian history. So this is a project, what we call as a project-based learning. And that's where students explore and then present their work with the guidance from the teacher. Now, since students have to research the subject, their interest is cultivated. It's not like as opposed to a teacher in a class teaching something, whereas a student is doing a project. So they are going to Google, they're going to internet, they are finding out on their own what is about that topic. And yes, they will see both positive and negative, and then they will form their opinions. Another thing that we found very impactful is our library. We have hundreds and hundreds of Amar Chitragatha books. Though school is Hindi and Gujarati, but these books are in English. And my kids tell me that was the most delightful part of Bal Vihar that they used to love those books. So in summary, I mean, introducing history through project and activity-based learning, reading books and resources while learning language and culture can create interest in these students, and that in turn will create leaders of tomorrow who will be invested in the culture and by extension Hindu Dharma.
Thank you, Jayanji. That's a fantastic way of doing, things too. Like, from the language, develop the interest in the language, and then from there to, project-based, piecemeal fashion of understanding the dharma. So and hands-on experience as well, as you said. Oh, thank you so much for that insightful answer. I now next go to Bhakti, and we'll come back to all the panelists. You have shared, you have answered all the questions that has been put to you. We'll come back again around the panel to understand what the next steps that you want the community to work on. I mean, this is, as I said, this is going to be a Vichar month, and it will be something that we will take back and work as a big large Hindu community across the country. So Bhakti, you are next. What do you think are the next steps for the Hindu community to implement your suggestion?
Sure. I have 3 steps. 2 of them are for temples and organizations, and 1 is for parents at home, right? Regardless of what approach you take, the most important thing to remember is that if the children do not feel connected to the festivals or whatever they're doing, they will not continue them on their own going forward. For temples, this is something that we have started implementing here at HAS and Hindu Society of Minnesota for the past few years, and we're growing and learning. First is providing a step-by-step guide. So, for example, at our Mandir a couple years ago when we did Mahashivratri, we created a page everyone could follow on their phone with step-by-step instructions. What's going on? What's the puja? What's the meaning? How can you follow? Read along. Just this week, we sent out a Diwali puja, Lakshmi puja guide for any family who can't come to a mandir or who don't know how to do the puja at home or don't have family rituals that they know or can follow. It's a simple few-page document in English with meaning, with everything listed. Here's how you can do it by yourself. And that's something that can be continued by a kid alone at college or a family together here at home. But these are the types of resources, like I work together with Hindu Jain Temple of Pittsburgh to come up with this, and we need to share through our temples, because where can people turn to get resources if not mandirs and organizations, right? So first is that, and make adjustments as needed. Rakhi, for example, should not be about sisters tying Rakhis to brothers. I tie Rakhi to all my sisters, to my nieces and nephews, and every year that's a fun thing that we do together, right? So make adjustments to the festivals in a way where it makes sense to us and how it connects with us. The second thing temple can do is making it more interactive. One thing we do at HATS is every year at Dashera, we ask kids, many kids make Ravan at home, they burn it by themselves, they submit the pictures, we see them together as a community. This year we're doing Diwali crafts, make Diwali cookies, make Diwali pop-up cards, make your own candle holders. For Shivratri, kids made Trishuls, they made Trishul bookmarks, they made Damru toys. Every event can be something that gets the children involved with something beyond just the puja, because that makes it fun for them. It makes them understand the things that are involved in the festival beyond just, here's the prayer, say it, and move on and have prasad and gossip with people, right? There's more to festivals than just that. And lastly, at home, parents, connect our festivals to what we see around us. Anitaji said this well. Hindus growing up here have a higher obligation to serving in the society than just looking at ourselves as Hindu, right? So when we have festivals, Navratri, so for example, Thanksgiving, it's very assumed here, a lot of people on Thanksgiving go and serve at homeless shelters. Well, how can we bring that idea into our festival? During Navratri, volunteer at a women's shelter, right? We're praising Navratri Devi. During Holi, volunteer somewhere where it helps kids who don't have parents that can guide them. During Purnima, help inner city education programs where children can get education. Every festival should be connected to a social cause that is around us as Americans. That's the best way for us to combine our identity as Hindu and Americans both, because growing up here, we're not Indian, as Anitaji said. We are American and we are Hindu, and it's important for us to find that gap, bridge that gap, and find the cohesion point between the two in order to continue this going forward.
Excellent point. Thank you, Bhakti. Thank you so much. Anitaji? The next
So-
steps for the Hindu community.
Yeah, so Bhakti, thank you so much, because I'm going to cut my remarks a little shorter. So that was perfect. No, I really agree. I think that the, overall living here in the United States, we see that churches and synagogues and even mosques and gurdwaras in America have actually really upped their game as far as engagement in community service activities. And I think they've done it in a great way. And I know that Hindu temples are doing it. And I know that every temple can point out ways in which they have been involved. But I will challenge us to say that, some of these churches and synagogues have been doing this for 200 years in the United States. They have practiced it and perfected their community engagement. We are relatively new at this game, but we have to challenge ourselves to really get our hands dirty and to get our heart broken when we work with the community. And by that, I mean, it's not enough for the Hindu temple to conduct a food and clothing drive and have 1 or 2 adult members drop the supplies off to the homeless shelter and take a picture outside, or drop the supplies off to the domestic violence shelter. We actually have to be willing to go into those locations, introduce ourselves as Hindus, and meet and work with people in those places. So writing a check is great and it's very helpful, but it's sterile. And the only way to cultivate real relationships with the community is by being present in those difficult and sometimes, for a lot of people, scary places. We should be willing to open our temples as places for voting on election day. We should be willing to open our temples to run our own soup kitchens, to arrange giveaways, for home goods, for clothing, even if it's done twice a year as on a Holi and Diwali. But we also need to connect to non-Hindus. We need to teach Hinduism 101 classes. There are so many non-Hindus who I take on tours at the Hindu temple, and they are so enamored of the concepts of Hinduism. And they say, wow, is there a class? Is there something I can attend? And then I have to say, well, sort of, yes, maybe you can come to this, but not really, because it's in Hindi or it's in this, or you want to, and so we need to become more facile with the language and teach Hinduism in ways that are relevant to non-Hindus, because we need to expand our reach. The first generation established a foothold, built the temples, and now we need to live the values that we were all taught in those temples in our local community. And we need temples to engage and join in those things. Now, to do that, we as a community need to be willing to support financially positions of engagement within temples that pay wages and have respect, that will actually encourage our own people to become quote unquote lay ministers, to encourage them to become the temple communications and social media directors and managers. The days of relying on volunteers is coming to a close. If we want our history to be heard and be meaningful, we have to have endowed positions in all of these temples and all of these communities. And we have to be proud of our children when they say, I want to be involved locally and I want to do these things. And we have to be supportive of these kind of positions. So getting people from the temple to join a variety of local boards, local social, political, charity organizations is critically important. And then empowering our own people by creating financial positions for them to do that work within our temples is the way we get there. That is how every church in America works. Every synagogue works. They are present everywhere, and they do it because they are paid positions to do it. Volunteers can only do so much. All of us are overly engaged in what we're doing, and there's burnout. And so unless we value this, I used to hear a quote from from people when they were talking about kids getting involved in politics, right? सबको राम बननी चाहिए लेकिन मेरे घर में नहीं. So it's really, really hard to live that out unless you do it, right? So you have to support these kind of things. So that's what I challenge our community to do coming into this next generation.
Thank you. Thank you. Duly noted, Anita ji. Thank you. Yagnish ji, next steps for the community to implement your ideas. You're still on mute.
Yeah, so I think I will just keep it focused. Much of the things I supposed to say is covered by Anita ji and Bhakti ji. So few things I will add here. I think the education part where we are very much focused on limited area of education needs to be enhanced, where some of the critical subjects like social justice from the Hindu Dharma perspective and many others like animal care or environmentalism, right? So those kind of things should be explored from the Hindu perspective, because we need to find the answer of today's question from Hindu Dharma perspective. We need to show them this is how the Hindu Dharma is relevant for today's time, right? And this is how we should be doing, saying that for each of this today's critical, big, complex questions, we need to find answer. If that needs to be going in the direction where we need additional hours of Bal Vihar, right? Because these are the serious subjects and 1 or 2 hours cannot give justice, right? Then we have to explore the situation where we could give education more than 1-2 hours a week, right? That because these are something we should not left out, right? We need to ask this question: how we make sure that this Bal Vihar children we are teaching, they are going to continue to work this work for this temple in coming generation. Are we sure that they will do it, right? Otherwise we won't have a volunteers in next generation to run these temples, right? And if we now go back and see what is that, we have to make sure that this generation, small younger generation, will end up being a volunteer for temples, running the temples, community organization, right? For that, we have to make this education approach more serious, right? And if needed, we should have the temple should open their own school, right, where they can start teaching, giving more times on the subjects, and that's how they can give justice to all the serious subjects or the matters we are discussing here. And the last thing I would say for parents, I think we are pretty much have a list of things which we described in our workshop. So I can only say that just join our workshop. Next will be in December, and that's where we discuss this at length.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Jayanji,
Yeah.
Next steps for the community.
Sure. So I think the overarching goal of this seminar was to how to counter the skewed and incorrect narrative rampant in current times about Hindu Dharma. I'll restrict my recommendation to that overarching goal. So I think we need a better coordination about the narrative that we want to counter. And that coordination has to be among the different temples and Bal Vihars. I believe HMEC is trying to do that, and I think that should be taken to the next logical level. We need consistency in our own narrative. So you cannot counter, skewed narrative from from other people unless you yourself are very clear and you are consistent among. We are consistent among ourselves. So one thing that I would encourage to consider is having a resource link on HMEC website as well as on various temples website. That resource should include facts or question answers about what are the common misconceptions about Hinduism and what is the reality. I think having that kind of a resource will be great. Like for example, recently there is currently going on upheaval about casteism in Hinduism and things of that nature. I mean, do we have what is our response to that, and is it consistent among all the temples? I think that's what is needed, and HMEC is a great place and great vocal agency, nodal agency, where we can have that kind of counter argument. That would be my recommendation.
Excellent. Thank you, Jayanji. Very, very well said. So I'll just summarize what the next steps all the panelists have said. very briefly, I'll summarize. And as I said, this is the beginning. We will be working, taking a hard look on the next steps, and have the conversation going and bring some tangible actions out of this. So Bhakti, you were saying that we need to make the next generation kids connect to the festivals, and make it interactive for the kids to be more involved, more have more understanding of what these festivals are all about, and also try to bring that social message. I mean, that those social message are very inherent in all the festivals, but somehow we need to make a conscious connect between the social message and our festivals. For example, the Shakti Upasana during the Navratri. Go to the women's group, and Raksha Bandhan. That Raksha is for everybody, boys, girls, everybody. So very valid points, and very good ideas. I think we can start pilot projects in some local temples, and once that becomes big, we can spread it nationwide. And I know HATS, the Hindu Society of Minnesota, does pioneering work, and I'm looking forward to that kind of leadership from the HATS volunteers. So, Anitaji, point well taken. Increasing the engagement in the community, and point. You made a very good point of get your hands dirty. It's not just matter of dropping off the check and saying we did our dharma, we did our seva, but get the hands dirty and go into the soup kitchens, or go into the homeless shelters, and do the seva there. Jana seva is Janardana seva. So that was your message, and we will take a hard look into that. There are some temples who are already doing that, but I think we should be doing it on a national level. And to your point that we kind of give up our narrative, at the hands of the volunteers or the social media or the communication. We should have some dedicated paid position. And I would like to say that Hindu Pact, that is the Hindu Political Advocacy Group of VHPA, already has about 7 to 8 interns, paid interns, and that's our way of supporting them, and also inculcating all the points that we were talking during this webinar into those interns, and making them strong Hindu leaders of the future. So point well taken, Anitaji. Igneshji, you were talking about the gap that is there in the education system and the parenting style, and how to explore imparting Hindu education more than that 1 hour or 2 hours that we can catch hold of them during Sunday temple school. I think that's the need of the hour. That is, we have successful Bal Vihars running all over the country, but we still find the kids little bit alienated from their parents and rest of the folks. And that's a gap where we need to, have a consistent way of reaching out to them more than that 1 or 2 hours, and answer those critical complex questions or issues that we are all dealing as a community. And of course, Hindu Parents Network is already doing wonderful work, and we will be amplifying. I think all the Hindu organizations should lend a support, and amplify the voice and amplify the good work that we all are doing. So we will be supporting Hindu Parents Network and all the programs that they are putting out to help us tide over this issue that we are having. Thank you, Yignesh. Jayanji, thank you. You are absolutely right. We have to set the narrative straight. There are a lot of misconception and regarding certain concepts of our Hindu Dharma, and we all have to put together our heads together and come up with probably one procedure or one standard responses, because we are all saying the same thing, but probably in a different manner. I think the work has already started, whether it's the difficult, uncomfortable topic of caste or some other thing, the work has already started where the national level Hindu organizations are all teaming up together with a unified, giving the unified response. But that message has to trickle down to all the temples and Bal Vihars and other places where Hindus can easily access those responses. So thank you so much. Thank you all for joining. Sanjay Mehtaji, if you are on the webinar and panel, and if you have anything to add.
Yeah, well, I think we are almost end of time. I'll take maybe a minute to just say what I made some notes. So one thing is very clear from listening to all of you, that celebrations may have inconsistencies, but the underlying ideals and values are consistent. That we should carry forward, because that's what going to write in the history books. So all of you agreed to that. And just one last thing, I made an equation out of this discussion: Hindu plus sign, gap, plus sign, American. We are here to fill that gap. And if we fill that gap properly, we'll have a better history in America also. I think all these suggestions what they have given is going to fill that gap. So Hindu plus gap plus American. If we have the gap filled properly, we'll have a better history and legacy. Dhanyawad. Thank you very much. I enjoyed the whole 1 hour.
Thank you. Thank you. And cannot end this webinar without thanking the key people who made this webinar possible. Of course, all the panelists, all those who have attended this webinar and are watching us through the Facebook and the YouTube channels. Ajay Shahji for the technical support, Abhishek Singh ji for being there, helping us with all the Zoom and all the nuances, technical support again. Sanjay Mehta ji, of course, for the overarching guiding support for us. Tejal Shahji is also there. And I would also like to thank my good friend Sapna Purohit for helping us putting all this the questions and all the things that goes behind the scenes, right, to get this webinar going. So thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of the afternoon. Thank you. Namaste.